The Talvidian High Command never anticipated that their greatest challenge on Earth would come from a human who could disappear using nothing but soil and foliage. Commander Oryx Velnari paced across the gleaming deck of the surveillance outpost, his four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. The holographic displays around him showed thermal readings, motion sensors, and life-form detectors spanning a 20-kilometer radius in the dense woodland region their forces had designated as Sector 7. "Explain to me," Oryx hissed through translucent mandibles, "how a single primate has evaded our entire battalion for 17 cycles." Science Officer Lyrith Tau shifted uncomfortably. The human designated as Phantom appears to possess extraordinary abilities to manipulate native materials to deceive our detection systems. Primitive dirt and vegetation should not confound technology that can detect quantum fluctuations across dimensions. Oryx slammed a taloned appendage against the console. These humans were supposed to be simple prey. The Talvidians had arrived 3 months prior with overwhelming force. Earth's militaries had fallen quickly, their advanced weapons rendered useless by Talvidian shielding technology. Victory had been swift, bloodless by Talvidian standards, and utterly complete, except for isolated pockets of resistance. Chief among these resistors was a human tracker and wilderness survival expert known only as Phantom. Military records recovered from human databases identified this individual as Trace Westbrook, formerly of an elite terrestrial warfare unit specializing in reconnaissance and guerrilla tactics. Westbrook had disappeared immediately after the initial invasion, only to resurface as a ghost haunting Talvidian patrols. "The latest incident occurred here," Tactical Officer Nixis said, highlighting a section of dense forest. "A supply transport disabled. 3 warriors incapacitated. No energy signatures detected before, during, or after the attack." The recording showed only forest, still and silent. Then, what appeared to be a section of moss-covered ground simply stood up. The figure blended so perfectly with its surroundings that even when moving, it seemed like nothing more than a trick of light filtering through leaves. "Magnify and enhance," Oryx ordered, leaning closer. The image zoomed in on the figure. What the Talvidians had assumed was advanced optical camouflage technology was, in fact, nothing more than a meticulously constructed suit of mud, clay, grass, bark, and leaves, molded directly onto the human's body and face. "Impossible," breathed Oryx. "Our scanners are designed to detect biological entities regardless of visual concealment. That's what makes this human unique," Lyrith explained. "Westbrook has discovered that by covering himself in the ferrous clay abundant in this region, mixed with certain mineral deposits and organic matter, he creates a natural electromagnetic damping field. It's not technically camouflage, it's a bioorganic counter-surveillance technique." Security Chief Valxis, silent until now, spoke with grudging respect. "The human has essentially turned himself into a walking Faraday cage using nothing but mud. Our sensors register him as background radiation, indistinguishable from the forest floor." Oryx stared at the display as the mud-covered human vanished back into the underbrush. "This primitive using primitive methods is making fools of the most advanced military force in 3 galaxies." In the forest 20 kilometers away, Trace Westbrook peeled away his earthen second skin, revealing sweat-slicked features with piercing gray eyes and a face weathered by 43 years of challenging Earth's most extreme environments. What the Talvidians didn't understand was that Trace hadn't developed this technique to fight aliens. He'd perfected it decades ago, learning from indigenous cultures across Earth, enhancing their ancient knowledge with his own innovations. The aliens had technology. Trace had something better. He had become the land itself. Dawn broke over the misty forest as Trace Westbrook knelt beside a small stream, meticulously renewing his earth armor. His fingers worked with practiced precision, mixing different consistencies of clay with charcoal, crushed leaves, and pine resin. Each component served multiple purposes. The clay blocked thermal signatures. The charcoal disrupted visual detection. The plant matter provided camouflage patterns, and the resin waterproofed the mixture while binding it together. Trace had been living this way since childhood, though not originally by necessity. Born to environmental scientists who'd raised him in remote research stations worldwide, he'd grown up learning survival techniques from indigenous communities on every continent. What began as childhood games became professional expertise when he joined military special operations and later, when he left to become a wilderness guide and survival instructor. Now, those skills were humanity's unexpected advantage. His current hideout was a hollow beneath the enormous root structure of an ancient oak. Inside, he maintained a carefully organized collection of supplies, handcrafted weapons, medicinal plants, and most importantly, his journal. Pages filled with observations about Talvidian patrol patterns, equipment vulnerabilities, and communication protocols. A twig snapped nearby. Trace froze, becoming one with the forest floor. Through the mud mask covering his face, his eyes tracked the movement, not Talvidian, but human. "Damn it, Merrick," he whispered as the lanky figure stumbled into view. "You're making enough noise to wake the dead." Merrick Forrester, former university botanist and Trace's reluctant partner for the past month, nearly jumped out of his skin. "How do you do that?" "I've been looking right at this spot for 5 minutes." Trace stood, clumps of earth and vegetation falling away as he moved. "You weren't looking at me. You were looking for a person-shaped object, not noticing the irregularities in the natural pattern." He gestured to Merrick's attempt at camouflage, hastily applied mud streaks. "And that's why you keep getting spotted." "Not all of us spent our lives rolling in mud," Merrick grumbled, but there was respect in his voice. "I've got news." The resistance team in Sector 9 managed to intercept a Talvidian transmission. "They're planning something big, bringing in some kind of specialized hunter." Trace's expression hardened beneath his earthen mask. "They're adapting. We knew they would." "It's called Korlath," Merrick continued. "Some kind of apex predator they've engineered specifically for tracking." The resistance leader, Ilara, she says it can detect pheromones from kilometers away. "Then we'll need to mask our scent completely," Trace replied, already thinking through solutions. "There's a hot spring 2 clicks east with sulfur deposits. We can use that." Merrick looked uncertain. "There's more. They're not just after you anymore. They've identified me as your associate, and they've located Ilara's base. They're moving against all resistance cells simultaneously." Trace absorbed this information silently. For months, he'd maintained his solitary war, striking Talvidian patrols and vanishing into the wilderness. But isolated actions wouldn't be enough anymore. The stakes had changed. "Take me to Ilara," he finally said. 3 hours later, deep within an abandoned mining complex, Trace faced Ilara Brightwood, the fierce-eyed former aerospace engineer who'd assembled the largest resistance network on the continent. Around them stood 24 survivors, scientists, soldiers, and civilians united by desperation. "So you're the famous Phantom," Ilara said, studying him with calculating intensity. "I expected someone cleaner." Trace offered, still wearing patches of his earth armor. "More talkative," she corrected. "Your reputation is built on silence and stealth. But now we need you to teach others." Trace scanned the group. Most of these people have never spent a night outdoors. Teaching them to become invisible takes years of practice. "We don't have years," Ilara replied sharply. "The Talvidians are bringing in their hunter in 2 days. If we can't hide from it, everyone in this room dies." Merrick cleared his throat. "I've been with him just a month, and I've already learned enough to survive longer than I should have." Trace studied the determined faces around him. These weren't warriors. They were ordinary people facing extinction. But in their eyes, he saw the same fierce will to survive that had kept him going. "We start now," he declared, "and we'll need a lot more mud." The Korlath emerged from its stasis chamber aboard the Talvidian command ship, unfurling to its full 3-meter height. Its body resembled an iridescent praying mantis crossed with a wolf, with primary sensory organs arranged in a crown-like structure around its elongated skull. The creature's 6 limbs ended in retractable claws designed for both swift movement through various terrains and efficient termination of targets. Commander Oryx addressed the beast's handler, a stern Talvidian bioengineer named Drixus. I was promised the ultimate tracker. This thing will find the human called Phantom. The Korlath doesn't just track, Commander, Drixus replied with professional pride. It learns, adapts, and anticipates. We've loaded it with all known data on the target's behavior patterns. It will not only find your human, but predict where he's likely to move next. Oryx remained skeptical. The human has repeatedly demonstrated an uncanny ability to deceive our most sophisticated detection systems. Which is exactly why biological pursuit is our solution, Drixus explained. The Korlath doesn't rely on technology that can be fooled. It hunts using senses evolved across a dozen genetic lineages. Thermal masking won't help when the Korlath can detect the specific bacteria living on human skin from kilometers away. The bioengineered hunter tilted its head, seemingly understanding it was the topic of conversation. Its compound eyes shifted color from amber to deep crimson. It's ready, Drixus announced. We should release it immediately in the sector where the human was last detected. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, 27 humans crouched around bubbling sulfur springs, their bodies covered in variations of Trace's earth armor. They'd spent 18 grueling hours learning the fundamentals of natural camouflage, and the results were mixed. Some, like Alara, had taken to the techniques with surprising aptitude. Others still looked like people poorly disguised as walking mud piles. Remember, Trace instructed as they submerged themselves in the pungent water. The sulfur will neutralize your natural scent, but it's temporary. After 12 hours, you'll need to reapply or find another masking agent. Ilara emerged from a spring, her normally blonde hair now plastered with gray-green clay. You're certain this will work against their new hunter? Nothing certain, Trace admitted. But sulfur disrupts most biological olfactory systems. It's why skunks evolved to use it defensively. Marek, now considerably more proficient with his earth armor, approached with a handful of crushed plants. I've prepared the additional botanical components you requested: anise, mint, and nettle. The combination should further confuse any scent tracking. Trace nodded approvingly. Your botanical knowledge is becoming our advantage. Apply it liberally, especially around pulse points. As the group continued their preparations, Trace pulled Ilara aside. The techniques I'm teaching are just the beginning. True invisibility isn't about covering yourself. It's about becoming part of the environment. You must learn to move like the forest moves, to breathe with the rhythm of the wind. Poetic, but we need practical solutions, Ilara countered. This creature arrives tomorrow. This is practical, Trace insisted. The Talvidians rely on patterns, predictions, and probability. What defeats them isn't just physical concealment, it's behavioral unpredictability. Ilara studied him curiously. You don't just hide from them. You think like them. To defeat a predator, understand how it hunts, Trace replied. These aliens expect logical responses. They anticipate we'll run, hide, or fight according to recognizable patterns. So we do what they consider illogical. We move toward danger instead of away. We separate when they expect us to cluster. We remain still when they expect flight. That night, as the resistance members prepared for what might be their final stand, Trace ventured alone to the edge of the Talvidian patrol zone. There, he meticulously created false trails and misleading signs, footprints that appeared mid-track and disappeared inexplicably, heat signatures that moved irrationally, scent markers placed in impossible locations. When the Korlath was released at dawn, it would encounter a puzzle unlike anything its engineered mind had been programmed to solve. Human behavior that defied prediction because it deliberately defied logic itself. Trace smiled beneath his mud mask. The ultimate camouflage wasn't just blending with nature. It was becoming something the enemy's mind couldn't recognize as a pattern at all. The Korlath moved through the forest with eerie grace, its segmented body flowing around obstacles without disturbing a single leaf. Behind it trailed a squad of Talvidian soldiers, struggling to keep pace with their biological tracker. Unlike their technological equipment, the hunter was performing flawlessly, following invisible trails that even its creators couldn't detect. The creature has isolated 23 distinct human scent signatures, reported Lieutenant Zavros, monitoring the neural feed from the Korlath, all showing traces of sulfur contamination, an obvious attempt at masking. Commander Oryx, observing from the hovering command platform, felt a surge of satisfaction. So our elusive phantom has found friends. Excellent. We'll eliminate this resistance cell entirely. The Korlath suddenly stopped, its sensory crown pulsating with rapid color changes. It lowered its head to the ground, examining what appeared to be an ordinary patch of forest floor, then emitted a series of clicking sounds that its neural interface translated for the Talvidians. Fascinating, murmured Drixus, the handler. It says this scent pattern is deliberate deception. The human has created false trails by dragging scent-marked objects in nonsensical patterns. Oryx's mandibles clicked in irritation. Can it determine the genuine trail? It's already processing the puzzle, Drixus assured him. The Korlath wasn't just engineered for tracking. It was designed to outthink prey that attempts counter-tracking methods. As the hunter continued its analysis, none of the Talvidians noticed the slight discoloration on a nearby tree trunk, a discoloration that slowly shifted position, centimeter by centimeter, moving against the breeze in a way no natural phenomenon would. Trace observed the hunting party from his perfect stillness, the specialized clay mixture he'd developed allowing him to blend seamlessly with the bark. The Korlath was even more formidable than he'd anticipated. It wasn't just following scents, it was interpreting them, building a narrative from the chemical signatures it detected. This changed everything. Using the minuscule movements he'd perfected over decades, Trace extracted a small clay container from his camouflage suit. Inside was a concentrate of the resistance group's combined scent markers, collected when they'd applied their camouflage. With glacial slowness, he unsealed the container and let a single drop fall onto a leaf overhead. The effect was immediate. The Korlath's head snapped up, its sensory crown blazing with excited colors. It immediately changed direction, leading the Talvidian squad away from the actual location of the resistance cell and toward a prepared zone that Trace had selected the previous night. Meanwhile, 5 kilometers away, Ilara led the resistance members through a series of underground limestone caverns that Marek had identified. The network of caves ran beneath the forest floor, naturally insulated against both thermal and biological detection. Trace said to hold this position for exactly 4 hours, Ilara instructed as they reached the central chamber. Not a minute more or less. Timing is everything. One of the newer resistance members, a former construction worker named Dorn, looked skeptical. We're putting a lot of faith in one man's plan. That one man has survived longer than anyone against these aliens, Ilara replied sharply. And his plan isn't just about hiding. It's about changing how we fight entirely. Back in the forest, the Talvidian hunting party followed the Korlath into a narrow ravine. The creature moved with increasing excitement, certain it was closing in on its quarry. Commander Oryx ordered his soldiers to ready their weapons as they approached what appeared to be a small cave entrance, partially obscured by vegetation. The scent concentration indicates multiple humans inside, Drixus reported, reading the Korlath's neural feed. The phantom appears to be among them. Magnificent, Oryx purred. Secure the entrance. We'll gas the cavity and collect the bodies. As the soldiers moved into position, the Korlath suddenly froze. Its sensory crown flattened against its skull, the biological equivalent of a system error. It began moving erratically, circling the same spot repeatedly. What's happening? Demanded Oryx. Drixus frantically analyzed the creature's neural patterns. It's confused. The scent signatures are here, but they've been chemically altered in a way that makes no sense. Almost as if the realization came too late. The ground beneath the Talvidian squad suddenly collapsed, not a natural sinkhole, but a carefully constructed pit trap concealed beneath a layer of false forest floor. As soldiers tumbled into the pit, the ravine walls came alive. Resistance members covered in perfect earth camouflage emerged from what had appeared to be solid stone faces. And standing atop the ravine, covered head to toe in bark-patterned clay that made him indistinguishable from the surrounding trees, Trace Westbrook watched as humanity's counteroffensive officially began. The aftermath of the ravine ambush spread ripples of shock through the Talvidian command structure. For the first time since their arrival on Earth, an entire tactical unit had been captured intact, including the precious Korlath Hunter. More disturbing than the loss of personnel was the methodical precision with which it had been executed. High Commander Zavrax, newly arrived from the Talvidian homeworld, stood before the tactical display with rigid posture that betrayed profound dismay. This primitive resistance shouldn't be possible. Our intelligence indicated humans had no defense against our technology. Oryx, recently demoted for his failures, responded carefully. The humans aren't using technology to counter ours, High Commander. They're using absence of technology. Zavrax's upper eyes narrowed. Explain. The human called Phantom has developed methods that exploit our dependence on advanced detection systems, Oryx elaborated. What makes him dangerous isn't sophisticated countermeasures. It's his mastery of techniques, so ancient our systems aren't designed to recognize them as threats. Across the room, Science Officer Lyrith projected images captured from the ambush site. These are magnified samples of the camouflage material recovered from the scene. It's a complex mixture of local soils, plant matter, and mineral compounds. The humans have created region-specific blends that perfectly match the electromagnetic and biological signatures of their surroundings. Primitive mud shouldn't defeat an interstellar empire, Zavrax hissed. That's precisely why it works, Lyrith countered. Our systems are designed to detect anomalies, energy signatures, synthetic materials, technological emissions. These humans have become the baseline our sensors are calibrated to ignore. Meanwhile, deep within the cave network, Trace supervised as resistance members interrogated the captured Talvidian soldiers. The aliens' translation devices had been confiscated, but Alara, with her background in xenolinguistics, was making remarkable progress establishing basic communication. More fascinating was Merrick's work with the captured Korlath. The botanist had discovered that certain earth plants produced compounds that temporarily neutralized the creature's sensory abilities. It's remarkable, Merrick explained, showing Trace a mixture he created. This combination of foxglove, belladonna, and fungal spores from the cave walls creates a neurological fog for the Korlath's sensory crown. It can't distinguish between real and false data. Trace nodded thoughtfully. Can you produce enough to weaponize it? Already working on it, Merrick replied. Alara's engineering team is developing delivery systems, basically primitive clay grenades filled with the compound. Throughout the cave complex, dozens of new resistance members were receiving accelerated training in Trace's earth camouflage techniques. What had begun as one-man survival method had evolved into a systematic approach to asymmetric warfare. Teams specialized in different environments. Forest dwellers used bark and moss. Grassland units incorporated prairie grasses and dirt. Urban fighters developed concrete and ash mixtures that mimicked rubble. Trace moved through the training areas, correcting techniques and demonstrating refinements. Remember, this isn't just about looking like your surroundings. It's about moving like them. A leaf doesn't decide to move. It responds to the wind. Your movements must have the same natural quality. Later that night, in the command chamber they'd established, Trace unrolled a map before Alara and the other cell leaders. The Talvidians are regrouping. They're bringing in specialized equipment designed specifically to counter our methods. How could you possibly know that? Asked Dorn, now converted to a believer after witnessing the ravine ambush. Trace pointed to markings on the map. Their patrol patterns have changed. They're establishing perimeters around these locations, likely landing zones for new equipment. Their movements show a fundamental shift in strategy. Alara studied the map. So our advantage is temporary. Every advantage is temporary, Trace agreed. But we've proven something critical. They can be beaten. And more importantly, we've captured enough of their technology to understand how it works. He revealed what appeared to be a primitive clay tablet etched with intricate designs. This is a schematic for a device that will disrupt their communications network. The materials are simple: copper from electrical wiring, quartz crystals from these caves, and circuits we can salvage from their own equipment. The resistance leaders looked at him in amazement. Trace smiled thinly. I didn't spend all those years just learning to hide. I watched, I listened, and I learned. The Talvidians aren't gods. They're just creatures with technology they no longer fully understand. What's your plan? Alara asked. Trace's eyes gleamed with purpose. We're going to teach them something they've forgotten. Sometimes the most sophisticated solution is the simplest one. As the resistance prepared for their boldest move yet, Commander Oryx stood alone in his quarters aboard the Talvidian command ship, reviewing footage of the human who had become his obsession. What he saw disturbed him deeply, not because of the human's effectiveness, but because of what it represented. The Talvidians had conquered 17 worlds across 3 galaxies, always through overwhelming technological superiority. But this human, with nothing but earth and leaves, had exposed a fundamental weakness in their approach. They had become so dependent on their technology that they'd forgotten how to see the universe without it. And now, that blindness might cost them Earth. Dawn broke over the main Talvidian landing zone as their newest weapon arrived from orbit, the Veil Breaker, a massive scanning array specifically designed to detect organic camouflage. Its imposing structure dominated the clearing, bristling with sensors calibrated to distinguish between natural formations and disguised humans, no matter how perfect their Earth armor might be. High Commander Zavrax addressed his assembled forces with cold determination. This primitive resistance ends today. The Veil Breaker will expose every hidden human within 50 kilometers. No amount of mud and leaves will conceal them from its quantum resonance scanners. As Talvidian technicians activated the device, its enormous dish began to rotate, emitting pulses of energy that penetrated the forest canopy. Almost immediately, the command screens lit up with signatures, dozens, then hundreds of human-shaped anomalies hiding throughout the surrounding wilderness. Magnificent, Zavrax exulted. Deploy strike teams to these coordinates. I want every resistance member captured or eliminated before nightfall. But as the Talvidian forces mobilized, something unexpected happened. The number of detected signatures continued to increase, not by dozens or hundreds, but by thousands. Soon, the screens showed over 10,000 human outlines scattered across the region. Science Officer Lyrith studied the readings with growing concern. High Commander, these results can't be accurate. Our planetary surveys indicate fewer than 300 humans in this entire sector. Explain this discrepancy, Zavrax demanded. Lyrith's analysis was interrupted by a communication alert, an unauthorized transmission broadcasting on all Talvidian frequencies. When activated, the screens displayed a mud-covered human face, eyes gleaming with intelligence and resolve. I believe I can explain those readings, said Trace Westbrook, his voice modulated perfectly to match Talvidian communication patterns. You're detecting the decoys we've planted throughout the forest, over 12,000 clay figures, each molded with the correct proportions and mineral content to trigger your sensors. Zavrax hissed with rage. Find this human. Trace the transmission. That won't be necessary, Trace replied calmly. I'm already here. The command center doors slid open, revealing a squad of Talvidian guards escorting what appeared to be a high-ranking Talvidian official. As they approached Zavrax, the official reached up and peeled away layers of extraordinarily detailed camouflage, not Earth armor this time, but a perfect replica of Talvidian skin patterns, created from clay, plant pigments, and salvaged materials from captured equipment. Beneath it stood Trace Westbrook, unarmed but utterly unafraid. Impossible, breathed Zavrax, as guards surrounded the human. Not impossible, Trace corrected. Just improbable. Your species has forgotten something fundamental about survival. True adaptation requires understanding, not just technology. I've spent months learning to think like you, move like you, see as you see. Around the perimeter of the landing zone, hidden resistance fighters deployed Marek's botanical compounds, neutralizing the Talvidian defensive systems. Simultaneously, other teams, disguised as landscape features, moved key components of Alara's engineered devices into position around the Veilbreaker. You've made a fatal error revealing yourself, Zavrax declared, ordering his guards to seize Trace. "Have I?" Trace asked. "Or have I shown you exactly what you expected to see? The lone human infiltrator, captured in a moment of hubris?" Realization dawned in Zavrax's compound eyes just as Alara's signal activated dozens of devices throughout the landing zone. The Veilbreaker's energy field suddenly reversed, its quantum resonance patterns rewriting the Talvidian command protocols. Throughout the clearing, Talvidian communication systems failed simultaneously, their neural interfaces displaying the same message: complete withdrawal from Earth or face technological paralysis across their entire fleet. "What have you done?" Zavrax demanded. "We've adapted your own technology using materials you consider primitive," Trace explained. "Every clay figure in the forest contains a component of this network. Thousands of simple receivers that, together, form a system powerful enough to hijack your command frequencies." Outside, Resistance members emerged from their perfect camouflage, rising from what had appeared to be rock formations, stepping out from tree trunks, even peeling away from the landing zone floor itself. Each carried devices built from Talvidian components embedded in clay casings. "You came to our world believing your technology made you invincible," Trace continued. "You never considered that our primitive knowledge might be something you had lost, the understanding that true survival doesn't come from tools, but from becoming one with your environment." Alara stepped forward, holding the control interface they had assembled from captured Talvidian technology. "Your choice is simple. Leave our world peacefully, or we'll disable every system in your fleet using the backdoor we've discovered in your quantum networks." Hours later, as Talvidian ships lifted off from Earth's surface, Trace stood on a hillside watching their departure. Beside him, Alara, Marek, and dozens of other Resistance members observed in silent amazement as the most technologically advanced species known to exist retreated from humans armed with little more than dirt, leaves, and ingenuity. "They'll be back, won't they?" Marek asked quietly. "With new technology, new countermeasures." Trace smiled, wiping a smudge of clay from his weathered face. "Perhaps. But they'll return fundamentally changed by this encounter. They've learned that technology has limits, that sometimes the oldest solutions are the most effective." Alara looked thoughtfully at the clay communication device in her hand. Talvidian quantum circuitry embedded in Earth materials, a perfect fusion of advanced science and ancient knowledge. "We've changed too. We understand their technology now, but we haven't forgotten what made us survive in the first place." As twilight fell across the forest that had become humanity's greatest weapon, Trace knelt and pressed his palm against the soil. Throughout human history, people had turned to the earth for protection, building shelters, fashioning weapons, growing food. Now, that most fundamental connection had saved them again, in a way no one could have predicted. The universe would know a new truth: underestimate humans at your peril. They might seem primitive, but they remember something many advanced civilizations have forgotten: that true mastery doesn't come from rising above nature, but from becoming one with it. And sometimes the most powerful technology is no technology at all.